Do you think that over the next few years, do you think we'll just continue on this path of trying to automate and streamline as many of the things that human beings are doing today? Or do you think that there are tasks that human beings just will never do well? And that's where we're going. Because I'm starting to see a lot of pushback. For example, text to speech. I'm seeing a lot of pushback in terms of the folks who make a living as voice actors. And there's a lot of anxiety and so on, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate all that. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? So AI has and machine learning have become much more popular over the past 10 years, and applications have been enabled now that really weren't 10 years. I think that the smartphone, for example, really helped, and the internet to help build these bigger systems that can do more things. And they are starting to do things now where people make their livings from. Whether AI has its particular strengths and limitations, so it's difficult to know, what exactly it can and can't do well. And a lot of the successes of using machine learning technology now is by, using it to help people in their jobs rather than to replace and automate their jobs away, I think. Um, so, doctors, for example, rather than having to take notes about what they've done, they could use a voice technology to dictate what they wanted to say, and then have it tidied up later after the fact. So they're not, in the middle of the day having to stop and take notes after talking to every patient. Things like that, I think, are really great success stories of the technology at the moment. How this plays out in the future, I think there's been some you know models lately that do some quite amazing looking things, like generating images from text and translating from one language to another, things that people find quite difficult. They're quite creative. There's still an open question about whether AI can actually sort of make new inventions and invent new styles of art, or come up with creative things in the same way that people do. So I think there's probably room for both. Well, I hope there is room for both, because it would be a somewhat dystopian future if machines are taking all of these jobs.
Yeah, no, I'm one of those who believes that machines take jobs and then create jobs, right? Because when you start solving things in a certain way, you create new opportunities, it then creates new challenges and so on. I mean, the thing that obviously is lost in that kind of characterization, the one that I just gave you, which is, hey, it works out in the end, is the fact that people are not, fungible, throwable, right? Telling somebody, hey, go train yourself, that's, I don't think that's a good answer, right? Let's say they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, right? And they still have a lot of energy and they want to do work. And then you go and tell them you need to get trained. Maybe they don't have, they need to, I don't know, maybe they don't have the education level, whatever. So, and there are many, I guess there are many ways to, hopefully, to mitigate at least the impact.
Yeah,
Of,
and I think a lot of those social impacts are still to be figured out, how to work with them. And I think that's something that often gets missed in discussions of technology, is what are the social impacts of the technology and how can you mitigate some of those. And there's a lot of talk about AI and automation and bias and things like that, and the way that technology is deployed obviously influences society and influences the way people live and behave and work,
yeah.
which has not received as much attention as perhaps it might have done.
Well, I think I agree with you. But I'm hoping that the fact that this technology, just human language technology and AI, is now getting into folks who who are, let's say, educated, so to speak, and they vote and they are engaged politically. I'm hoping that that debate now is going to be a lot more, will involve a lot more folks than before. Let's say
Mm,
before it was just policymakers speaking
yeah.
on behalf of, for the of the unwashed, so to speak. Um, but the example I think you gave, which is a doctor being able to do their job, right? I think that's a great example where this is definitely not replacing anyone. It's actually replacing chores that the doctor themselves finds distasteful. They don't want to do that or
Mm,
wasteful, and it's actually not a good use of a doctor's time at all. So there, I think definitely there's, and then there are lots and lots of examples like that. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that aspect of it. I don't think there's enough, um, enough talking about it. So um, usually these conversations they go very fast, so this is going very fast too. And so let me ask you the next question, which is this. Let's sort of focus on the marketer, right? Because like you and I know, marketers are folks who have budgets, right? And you guys who are out there, marketers, you know you who you are, and you have
yep.
budgets, and this technology that's emerging uh, is very promising in that context, I think, right? What does a marketer do? A marketer makes sure that they are getting their message out to their target buyer, potential buyer, right? Um, so doing or messaging your value well is challenging, especially when you have now so many challenges that you have to deal with, right?
Mm.
Um, and I'm trying to think in real time with you here. If we were to say, okay, be aware, hey, Mr., Mrs., or Ms. Marketer, or whatever person who is involved in a marketing initiative, maybe they are a line manager within the marketing team. Here is one thing you should be aware of, right? When it comes to human language technology.
Yep.
What would that be? What would you say that would be in terms of how they can use it to do their job of communicating effectively?
I think that the media portrays this image of AI and NLP as being, this very advanced, very all-encompassing kind of technology that is somewhat a little bit like magic. You want to understand some text, just give it to the AI and it will understand it.
Mm,
But that's not really how any of this language technology really works. You need to sit down and think, well, what does it mean for us in particular for this language to be understood? Or what exactly do we want to understand from this piece of audio? Or what exactly, you have to be a lot more specific about your needs and requirements. It's not a case of, this technology will do magic for you despite what you read in the media. And it has flaws. It's not 100%, it's not even 90 or 80% accurate some of the time.
mm,
It is often built for US English markets
mm,
as well. There's a lot of data sources available in US English. And so once you go outside of US English and maybe Mandarin and Spanish and some other, you fall into places where it's not as well. It doesn't work quite as well as you might expect as well. So there's things like that surprise people, I think. It doesn't make the same kind of mistakes that people make. A lot of the time when a machine learning makes a mistake, it's a laughable kind of funny, oh, why did it do that sort of mistake? And you have to build working with those into whatever it is you're doing. So you have to sort of anticipate some of those mistakes and be able to work with them in order to be able to get some use out of the technology. So I think, yeah, the thing I would say is, don't buy into the hype that it is sort of this magic technology that will do everything that you need, but instead think quite clearly and specifically about what you need, what business problem you're trying to solve, and how exactly you can go about doing that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I think AI is like saying use software, right? What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What does that
And
mean? Yeah.
and when you read about these advances in NLP and voice technology and other sorts of AI in the media, um, you don't really understand, the tasks that they're built to do and what exactly it is they're doing. Those aren't pulled out in the media as much. And so they tend to give this impression that it's a sort of big monolithic technology that can do anything you ask of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's become like it's a catch-all phrase that
Mm, it is a bit.
just like I remember the cloud. Everybody started saying the cloud in the
Mm,
early 2000s.
Yeah.
Didn't know exactly what it meant. But anyway, for the marketers, just one more iteration on that front. I'm thinking like practical things, like okay, what kind of things do they do? What do they blog and they tweet,
Mm,
and then what else they do? They send newsletters,
mm.
and they do webinars and so on and so forth, right? And um, I think if I were to say, hey, here's one thing you can do, and forget about the word AI. Just think about tools. Did you hear that?
I did hear that. Yep.
All right. I didn't do
We
a
can
good
edit
job.
that bit out.
I gotta turn things off. I usually do a good job of. I'm gonna cut all this out. Okay. So let me rephrase. So I'm trying to sort of give an actionable. Hey,
Mm,
um, Mrs. Marketer, please do, perhaps you can try doing X, right? So X might be something along the lines of, okay, you have a webinar, maybe use software to transcribe it, and then maybe there's software that summarizes, because I know there is
mm.
summarization software, and then that turns into 2 blogs, for example.
As we mentioned earlier, that could be quite complicated. Taking a spoken piece of audio and transcribing it and then summarizing it. I don't know if
Yeah,
things would do a good job of that yet, but certainly, transcribing it and making it accessible and searchable
yeah,
is something that might be useful. So your clients and your customers can find the bit in the video, because searching video and searching audio is quite tricky if you don't know what you're looking for. So being able to provide tools to navigate audio and videos to the bits that you want to know more
very
about
good.
is
Yeah,
something. Um,
absolutely. That's good.
and
That's a good one. Yeah.
yeah, and another thing that I know people often do is trying to understand feedback or sentiment or problems or issues from customers. So being able to um, if you have a lot of people tweeting about your product, you can sort of understand a little bit about the sorts of things they're saying in general. So you can categorize them and see, oh, we've got actually 50% of our feedback is on this one issue and 20% is on the second issue, and another 10% is on a third issue, and you can sort of see those and summarize at a high level some of the things that people are getting in touch with you about. So that sort of sifting through large quantities of text might be something that is interesting and useful as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I think there are some tools out there, but I don't know how many people are aware of them, right? That actually they can help you identify, surface a problem,
Mm,
right, quickly and react quickly. Um, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot that's still left on the table at this point that the marketers are not taking advantage of. Um, so let me. My next question has to do with so you have a PhD in what?
my PhD was on voice recognition and making voice recognition more accurate.
Okay, but is it an electrical engineering, computer science? What department was it in?
I was in the engineering department,
Engineering department. Okay.
but this technology, like sometimes in other universities, the computer science department or the
Yeah.
engineering department, it's a
Sure.
mix.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and so, and you did some research, right? Obviously,
Yep,
right? You wrote a dissertation. You published some papers, I'm assuming.
yep.
Right? So my question to you is: so you have lived, maybe you still live in these two worlds, the world
Mm,
of academia, and the world of, let's call it, business,
yep.
or commerce. Um, I believe that there is a gap between the two, between the two worlds, meaning there are bubbles. It feels to me, folks who are working in one world and the other, and then
Yep.
there are few folks who are who live in both and are aware of both. What's your assessment in terms of how much is not used from academia by non-academic like businesses and so forth,
Mm.
who are not aware or who are solving the problem, or approaching a problem naively, or solving a problem has been solved, and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts about that?
Um, I think in machine learning and voice and language technology, a lot of the developments that come out of academia, the ones that turn out to be useful for building products, often do get integrated after some time lag into some of the companies that are building this technology. So, um, you know, your cloud services that are doing speech recognition, for example, their engineers, their scientists will be keeping an eye on their production system and the research world to figure out if there are things that should be brought into that. So I think if you are using vendors for some of your machine learning and your voice and language technology, they should be doing that job of keeping up with academia for you. Um,
Mm.
and then when it comes to building your own technology, that's where it gets a little more tricky, because it's a highly skilled, it takes a lot of training and time to be able to build some of these systems. Sometimes the tooling's got a lot better in the past few years, so it's much more accessible now, but you still need to have some computer science or some physics or maths grounding to be able to make sense of the tools that are available to you. And so finding the people who can figure all of that out can be quite a challenge. It's a difficult field to hire in, if you to hire experts in this technology. Um, so yeah, I think, and the other point to make, I think academia and industry have different goals in life. So in academia, their goal is sort of to find novel things, to try out new techniques, to really understand the algorithms that are working, and how they behave and how they can be improved on. And when you take that out into the business world, the goal is to solve some sort of business problem that you've got, and you have to be able to map some of these techniques from academia onto that business problem, which in itself is a challenge to do. So these two different goals mean that not everything that's done in academia is directly applicable and can be taken up by industry.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking about the problem of conversational
Mm,
and turn pointing, right? And I'm pretty sure that there's stuff out there that we're not aware of that's been done in academia, because it's a fascinating problem.
mm,
Um, although what's interesting is that it is maybe what's been written out there is human to human, and knowing when a human being has
yeah.
finished talking. Whereas I think it may be a fallacy to say, well, let's take those learnings and apply them
Mm,
to a human talking to a machine, right?
yeah.
So a human might interrupt a machine, or might. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. And I think also some of the ways that things are solved in academia might not be, they might be a little complex, or a little too take a little too much time to run, or not quite be accurate enough
Mm,
for, even though they've improved on the state of the art, they might not be at the level that you really want to bring them yet into a product, and they need a bit more research before they're ready to be commercialized.
perfect. Okay. Okay. My last question to you is, um, so as we said at the beginning, it's always feels like the latest thing we're working on is the most exciting thing, right? Um, so right now, what is that? If you could share a project that you're working on, that's okay to share. I
I have
know.
a few projects I'm working on, and I can't share them all, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, I one of the
Or one that you finished
Yep.
recently. Yeah.
So a company that I'm working with that I think are very exciting is a company called Papercup. They're based here in London in the UK, and they work on using voice and language technology to dub a video from one language into another language. So they're
Mm,
using some of this synthetic speech technology, some of the machine translation and speech recognition technology to help people be able to dub videos from one language to another faster.
wow.
I think that's a really interesting and exciting project, because, as I said earlier, I think synthetic voices, we've got very natural synthetic voices, but taking them to that next level of making them, a bit more expressive is a real challenge right now. So that's a really interesting area that combines, the research world and understanding what's going on in the research world together with, um, yeah, the business world and being able to take it into a product. And Papercup are, I think, doing a great job of this.
No, that's a fascinating problem. It's a tough problem, but I think the value there is huge. Like I'm just thinking like one of the potential potential complications there is there are certain emotions that aren't translatable. Maybe I don't know from one culture to the next if we're
Mm,
talking about different languages, right?
yeah, I mean,
Or,
dubbing from one language to another is a really difficult thing to do, because
okay, yeah.
there's lots of things that aren't translatable, lots of things that require cultural context as well. Some of there was I don't know if you read any of the commentary when Squid Games was on Netflix. Squid
Hmm.
Games is a Korean TV show.
Hmm.
Um, and there was a Korean English speaker who was criticizing the subtitling because she said it wasn't translating it faithfully to the original Korean. Um, but you've got to remember that if you are not Korean, you don't have the context to be able to understand things quickly. So actually translating it to some sort of English equivalent, even if not entirely faithful, is perhaps a better choice here. And those constraints about how much time you have to convey an idea, and the characters of the originals, and lots of things to take into account when you're trying to make a translation. It's a very, very difficult problem.
It is. It is. I mean, translating just regular text, right, is a
Yeah,
problem, right? Going, I don't know, taking a novel and translating it from Russian to English, right?
yeah,
And that's a whole. Now imagine something that it has voice and has images and has
mm,
culture and so on and so forth, right? Anyway, I think the bottom line really is no matter what problem you touch on when it comes to human language technology, it becomes very quickly a complex problem, right?
yeah. And we are so good with language, we don't realize until you sit down and think about how to make a computer do it. A lot of these things seem really trivially easy to us.
Right?
That
Yeah.
small kids can talk, they can have conversations, they know large range of vocabulary,
Mhm.
they can express different emotions and different styles in their speech. But yeah, try and get a computer to do it, and you rapidly realize just how amazing we are at it.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like to me like maybe the our current approach is fundamentally I don't know, maybe simplistic, or perhaps we need to have a paradigm shift on how we tackle, because the problems are only going to get harder. I think the more we try to do, it's one of those where instead of converging, it feels to me to be going to be like it's going to be exponential. Because when you solve a problem, you open up a whole new set of problems because now we want to do more. Um, anyway, I think we can talk for hours and hours. But
Sure, we could.
but let me say thank you, Catherine Breslin, for taking the time. We will have a page that will have all of your contact information, how people will be able to connect with you, and I'll reach out to you via email to make sure that we have all that in that page. Um, but it's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's been great fun. Thank you very much for having me.
You bet. Thank you.